A few weeks ago, I debated a socialist. I stood my ground on capitalism because, frankly, it reflects the natural reality of survival. Individuals, adult individuals, are responsible for themselves. I reject the notion that says that the state is responsible for you and your welfare and your your future. Capitalism rewards risk takers and innovators. Now, I will say, after that debate, I did engage in some further reflection and I realized something. Capitalism is a great engine, but the way we've been practicing it, which is not true capitalism, well, we've let the engine become the driver. And we're driving around in circles in many ways.
How do you respond to, I guess, the critiques of capitalism, as well as the advocacy for socialism, as Davon just mentioned?
Well, I'll start off by saying any system created by humans is going to be fallible. There is a decent amount of criticism of capitalism, especially as it's practiced, which, in my opinion, is not pure capitalism. There's no way you come through 2008 and that whole bailout and call that capitalism. In fact, if you look back, starting in 1971, when Nixon took us off the gold standard, you'll see periodic, they happen about every decade or so, pretty substantial wealth transfers from the taxpayer to the to various institutions, be they the financial infrastructure in the case of 2008, or the retail industry in 2020. There's definitely, I'm not coming on here with blinders on and trying to sell a story that capitalism is infallible. There are two systems that work that are at work in this nation, in this world, and pretty much capitalism and socialism. Now, I did want to ask, because there's plenty of objective criticism for socialism, and you threw a lot at us, and I get it. You wanted to state your case. It's a lot to digest, but I did want to ask you a couple of really quick questions. You spoke about sovereignty and as you characterized it, an act of war in describing the slave trade. Would you not agree that that act of war had as one of the originators and enablers those West African countries that violated the sovereignty of human beings in their practice of taking slaves and then trading them to Europeans? Would you agree with that?
I would say that the historical record reflects that it is the European slave traders that created the market and that initiated the military activity that created the environment where it was where those complicit African tribes and societies, it became in their interest to be complicit in a global system that if they had not participated, others would have forced the complicity in the trade of enslavement. In other words, it's not like these were folks that were equally, a part of the process of enslavement. These are folks for whom, there was an entire industry and decrees from the church, from European governments. They were the ones that essentially created the context where the complicity took place.
Isn't it true that the tribes that made slaves available, you're right in that the market was created by the Europeans, but the supply was created by the West Africans that sold people into slavery? Is not that accurate?
I would say it's similar to the Juderon during the World War II, during the Holocaust. There were Jewish collaborators who helped to sell and helped to essentially be complicit in the Holocaust of European Jews. We wouldn't say that Jews were equally complicit in their Holocaust. We would say that they were Jewish collaborators. And so similarly, I think what you're describing are folks who were complicit in a system they had no power or control, They were complicit in that larger system. In terms of military, in terms of other kinds of exploitation, I think that to place them on equal ground as the slave traders, to me, defies the historical record.
Okay, well, we'll have to respectfully disagree on that. I think that is a trope that relieves the West African apparatus of culpability. And I think that a lot of people with ideology similar to yours use that as kind of a salve to give them some cover. So respectfully, we'll disagree there. The last thing I'll ask you, based on your opening statement, has to do with, yes, we agree. The earth does provide resources. There's literally so much oil coming out of the ground that in parts of the Arabias, you just see fires burning, just spontaneously, right, in the desert. But when we talk about the processing of, let's just take oil, in the socialist system, who extracts that resource, refines it, transports it? Explain how that gets done in a socialist environment.
It depends on the specific system. As you mentioned, there are a variety of different ways that different societies practice capitalism. I think, so what I'll do is I'll reference just a couple of examples of societies. So you think about what is now the Northeast region of the United States, which at the time prior to...
All right, I'm going to abbreviate that. You can check out that whole interview on the Justy Gods podcast. Listen, Gordon Gekko, remember that movie Wall Street? Gordon Gekko said greed is good, and for making faster microchips or better tennis shoes, sure, he was right. But greed also has a ceiling. All too often, not in every case, but all too often, greed only motivates, at least 51% of humans, it only motivates us to acquire more stuff, right? So if you look at AI as an example, now in AI, we have, the digital deity. And what are we using it for? Cure the common cold? No, that's not getting as much play as targeting ads for products we don't need and making drones for war in order to make those, martial tendencies more lethal. So we're using Prometheus's fire, basically. We're using it to keep a pizza warm, basically. That's kind of what we're doing with something like AI. We've condensed this down into commercial purposes and, again, military purposes. Is that all capitalism is capable of? Is it time to evolve capitalism and the human condition along with it? Now, look, everywhere socialism has been tried, it has failed. And the reason for that is because it actually ignores human nature. Capitalism, a lot of people aren't comfortable with it because capitalism really thrives on base human nature, right? Greed, the need to feel safe and secure, and the realization that, again, adults are responsible for ourselves. It might be comforting to believe that some great governmental God is going to come out of the sky and protect you from all hurt, harm, and danger, but government has proven time and time again that it is not about that. But at the same time, we recognize socialism's failures. There are some cracks in capitalism's structure as well. In many ways, capitalism is starting to fail because it reduces human nature to mere consumption. Okay, the capitalism that we practice today has reduced human nature to consumption, and oftentimes consumption of things that are bad for us. Like, we consume, as Americans especially, we consume a lot of depreciating liabilities. It's not like we're consuming a lot of assets, by and large. If that were the case, Americans wouldn't be in a situation where so many of us have trouble putting together $3,000 for an emergency. So we need an economy of ingenuity over materialism. That's kind of the direction that we really need to evolve into. A system where profit isn't necessarily measured in paper, but in personal and species wide developments. Okay. And that could be characterized by advancements in health, expansion of consciousness, not necessarily the latest iPhone, right? Waiting in line for this depreciating liability, mastering our environment, really looking at becoming a Kardashev one type civilization. So, in a lot of ways, our society rewards accumulation. How do we flip that so that not only are we able to enjoy a comfortable existence on this planet, but that we're also rewarding the types of behavior that are pushing us forward as a whole society, not just the 1% that has, more money than their great grandchildren will ever spend. Now, the gentleman said in that interview that capitalism was based on scarcity. I don't think that's entirely true. I think that there are some aspects that uh, seek to make things scarce in order to drive up the value. You can look at De Beers and how they have structured the diamond market as an example. But in other ways, abundance, we have definitely realized abundance, especially where things like food is concerned through capitalism, right? Food is an experience that uh, many cultures, I would say all of the human family, really can uh, get behind. Abundance in food, recipes, taste, texture, aroma. That is a hallmark of a society that is enjoying abundance, right? Variety in our nutritional choices. So, how do we graft that onto abundance in terms of educational and intellectual enlightenment, so to speak? If everyone can have everything, greed then loses its power as a motivator. Can't we be motivated by something other than material gain? Can we be motivated by, again, advancement of the human condition, space travel, cures for diseases? Yes, and that's a big one because a lot of the pharmaceutical companies, they look at treatment as the way to go in terms of research and development, because an actual cure would entail a moral obligation to relieve suffering. And there's only one payment necessary for a cure, right? As opposed to treatments that can demand payments in perpetuity. Yes, it's not unreasonable to believe that that is a business model, just like built in obsolescence. The fact that we've got a Voyager spacecraft that has been in operation for half a century and is still in operation, sending back information to this planet, but you can't expect a car to last more than 5 years. You're really stretching it, right? So, Peter Drucker, are you familiar with that name? He has expounded on a post-capitalist society and suggests that in the future, the unit of value isn't the dollar, but a contribution to human collective knowledge. Tesla, Einstein, Michelangelo, they weren't driven by a 401k, right? They were driven by legacy and mastery, a new system, a hybrid and evolved capitalism should definitely revolve around that and reward that above all. What are your thoughts? I'd love to hear them.